Welcome to Podcasting for Business Owners. I'm your host, Laura McRae, a podcast consultant, educator, and self-confessed podcast nerd. If you're thinking of launching a podcast or want to grow the one you have, you're in the right place. Hold on to your headphones and let's go. Welcome to Podcasting for Business Owners, the podcast that helps you share your story, lead your industry, and grow your network through podcasting. I'm your host, Laura McRae, and I'm excited to kick off the new year with a conversation about the massive opportunities podcasting offers right now. Today we're talking about how big podcasting is getting, why it's such an incredible medium, and why 2025 is the year to finally launch your podcast. If you've been on the fence about starting a podcast, this might be the episode you need to give you that push. Let me start with this. When I was waiting to pick up my kids from school recently, one of the mums I was standing with was asking me what I did for a living, and I told her I help people launch their podcasts. And she said to me, you know what, I don't even know what a podcast is. So I explained to her what a podcast is and recommended a few shows she might like. And then when I bumped into her again, she was telling me, oh, thanks so much. I love the podcast you recommended to me, and I now listen to them when I go out on my walks every day. And she's not alone. Globally, listening to podcasts has become part of so many people's routines, whether they're driving, working out, or doing chores around the house. And this is so important because podcast audiences are engaged. In 2024, there was 4 million podcasts worldwide and more than 500 million listeners. And on average, people spend 6.5 hours a week listening to podcasts. That's hours of undivided attention. And that's something that's not easy to come by these days where we're all very distracted. And what's great is that podcasts thrive when they have a small niche. One of my clients, for example, launched a podcast about death and dying. As a funeral celebrant, she felt strongly about creating a space for open conversations about a topic that's often considered taboo. Her compassionate approach resonated deeply with her audience, turning a passion project into a thriving community. When your podcast speaks directly to a specific audience, they feel seen and heard, and they keep coming back. Even a niche topic can attract a large, loyal following. But for your podcast to thrive, it needs to resonate with the right people. That's why understanding your ideal listener is the first and most important step to take. I had a client who's a home pre-start expert. She helps first homeowners prepare for and tackle their builder's pre-start meetings so that it's not a rushed experience. She's really passionate about supporting homeowners to take the lead in these meetings and not get pushed into making important decisions about their home design. But she's also passionate about advocating for females in the building industry and is pivoting her business in this direction. She wants to focus on empowering women to feel confident in this male-dominant industry. So instead of creating a podcast focused on who her current clients are, which is first-time homeowners, she decided to focus her podcast on who she wants her future clients to be, which is women in the building industry or who are interested in working in the building industry. If you're in a similar position with different areas of your business, think about where you want to go, not where you are now. Your ideal listener might not be someone you're working with at the moment, but want to attract in the future. If you're not sure who your ideal listener is yet, go check out the show notes. I've got a link to the Perfect Podcast Listener Worksheet. It's got a list of questions that helps you work out who your ideal listener is. Now let's talk about how technology is making it easier than ever to create amazing content. If you're worried about time, AI tools can simplify your content creation process. Tools like Headliner and Otter AI can transcribe your podcast episodes, while platforms like ChatGPT can help you turn that text into show notes, blog posts, or social media content. Yes, you'll need to tweak the content so it sounds more like your voice, but the backbone of the content is there for you. It's almost criminal not to take advantage of these tools. By having a podcast, you're not just creating audio content, you're streamlining your entire content strategy. And that streamlined content strategy doesn't just save you time, it helps you build something more valuable. And that's trust. Here's a story to illustrate this. One of my clients temporarily lost her Facebook account when it was hacked. While she was able to recover it after a couple of weeks, this experience was a reminder that we don't own our social media platforms. I know we don't own the podcasting platforms either, but I've never heard of anyone getting hacked on their podcast hosting platforms. It seems that podcasting hosting platforms are much more protected than free social media platforms. Podcasts aren't just great for building trust, they also have the power to connect you with people across the globe. Another client of mine thought her podcast would only attract local listeners to her here in Perth, Australia. But to her surprise, within a few months, she received a Zoom booking from someone in Africa who had found her through her podcast. Your podcast has the potential to connect you with people all around the world. By making sure it's available on platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts and YouTube, you can extend your influence far beyond your local area. And that global reach is just one of the ways podcasts can provide lasting value. Let's talk about how podcasting can future-proof your content strategy. Here's what's amazing about podcasts. They're evergreen. A single episode can keep attracting listeners years after it's been published. Unlike social media posts that disappear after a few days or even a few hours, your podcast episodes can generate leads and opportunities for years to come. And beyond just future-proofing your business, your podcast can even become a lasting legacy. One of my clients shared that she started her podcast not just for her listeners but for her family. She wanted to record stories about her life and family history so her children would always have those memories. Your podcast can be more than just a business tool. It can be a legacy, a lasting record of your expertise, values and the impact you've made. And with so many benefits, why wait any longer? Let me share just one more story to remind you that 2025 is your year to start your podcast. One of my clients told me she'd been putting off launching her podcast for 2 whole years because she was worried it wouldn't be good enough. And when we finally launched, she said, "I don't know why I didn't do this sooner." So if you've been thinking about starting a podcast, let this be your sign that 2025 is your year. Podcasting is more than just a creative outlet. It's a way to grow your audience, build trust, and create a lasting legacy. If you're ready to take the first step, don't forget to download the Perfect Podcast Listener Worksheet, and I'll put the links in the show notes. It's a perfect resource to help you define your audience and start creating content that resonates. And if you need personal support to launch your podcast, I offer one-on-one services. I also have an online self-paced course called the Podcast Launch Program that takes you through each step of launching your own podcast. I'll put the links to that in the show notes too. Thank you for listening to Podcasting for Business Owners. I hope you enjoyed this episode and I'll chat to you again next week. If you found value in this podcast, please leave a 5-star rating and a review would be even better. Your support shows that this is a good show, which will attract high-profile guests and in turn deliver greater value to you. This podcast is produced and edited by me. Don't waste your time on editing. Let me help you with your podcast. Check out the links in the show notes to get in touch.